podcast. They mix laughter, they get after. It's all captured in the fifth chapter.
That's right. Welcome to the fifth chapter. I am Brian Chapman. He is Dennis Fithian. And not just any Dennis Fithian, it's Still Life Dennis Fithian coming back once again. We haven't seen Still Life Dennis Fithian in a while, but Dennis is back. One of the things that I wanted to start off the show by mentioning is that our boy G Mac Cash, who we interviewed back in July, he came out with a new album that came out, last Friday, so 6 days ago. Dennis, did you have a chance to listen to it? Dennis? Yeah, this is, unfortunately, the way it looks like today's show is going to be, with Still Life Dennis, and not with the Still Life Dennis that you're used to, the one that we had a couple of months ago when we had some technical difficulties because the video was not working, but the audio was. Today, we're dealing with, one of the things that that happens, unfortunately, with the pandemic and with having to rely on doing this show remotely. Dennis informed me less than an hour ago that he lost power at his house. So when you don't have power, you don't have internet access. And when you don't have internet access, it's very difficult for you. Matter of fact, it's impossible for you to participate in the fifth chapter, but that's okay. We're going to have a great show with 5 fantastic chapters with or without Dennis. And if he regains his power during the course of this show, we'll be glad to welcome him in. As far as what we'll be discussing during the course of this show, let's take a look at today's book. In the second chapter, we're going to talk about some of the expectations for the Big Ten quarterbacks in the state of Michigan. Joe Milton wins the starting job for Michigan. Rocket Lombardi, it looks like he's going to win the starting job for Michigan State. In the third chapter, we're going to be, we as in I, and you guys as well, will be handing out some grades for Casey Mize and Tarik Skubal on their 2020 seasons, as it looks like Casey Mize's season could be complete, unless, of course, the Tigers have to play in a doubleheader on Monday against the Cardinals. And Tarik Skubal's season will end for certain on Sunday, as he's due to pitch the final game of the year. In the fourth chapter, we got Game 4 between the Nuggets and the Lakers. We know the Nuggets love to go down 3-1 so that they can win 3 in a row to win in 7. Right now, they trail 2-1. Are the Nuggets going to even things up or get back into that familiar 3-1 stance? And then, of course, in the fifth chapter, it is the major wager. Definitely want to thank everybody who is tuning into today's show, whether it's via Facebook Live, whether it's via YouTube, or it's via Twitch. I will try to monitor the feedback throughout the course of this show. As you guys know, typically Dennis is responsible for handling the feedback, but with Dennis not having internet access today, I'll be trying to juggle both responsibilities of producing the show and looking at the feedback at the same time. So just make sure that you try to bear with me with regards to that. Also want to thank those who are listening via Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and, of course, Spotify. Of course, you can catch the show on one of those streaming, on one of those podcast networks about an hour after the show ends. It should be actually about an hour and a half after the show ends, by approximately 11 o'clock. Let's first, though, start with the first chapter, and that takes us to the Detroit Lions, the same old Lions. We got a same old Lions Sunday coming up in Arizona this Sunday, and the Lions are obviously an 0-2 football team after blowing a double-digit 17-point lead in the first game, blowing an 11-point lead in the second game. They are record holders once again. They are the first team in NFL history to blow 4 consecutive double-digit leads and lose all of them. They did that in the final 2 games of last year to drop to 3-12-1, and they did so to start out this season with 2 losses. And obviously, when you start off the season 0-2, your odds of making the playoffs are very small. The Lions and their fan, well, I don't want to say the Lions, but their fan base doesn't seem to be all that concerned about making the playoffs at this point. It seems like they're just hoping to get a win if you're one of those slappies that just always has to root for the team no matter what. Or perhaps you're thinking about tanking for Trevor Lawrence or effing up for Fields or whatever you want to call it. I don't know what the North Dakota State quarterback's name is, but the top two quarterbacks are certainly Fields and Trevor Lawrence. You look at what's happening with the injury report, and actually I was taking a look at it before the show. I want to make sure that I have everything correct. It does look a little bit better for the Lions in terms of having healthy bodies, as Kenny Golladay was limited at practice for the second straight day, but it is looking like he's going to play. Also, Hal Vaitai, the starting right tackle who missed the first two games, is expected to play. He was limited in practice, but he's expected to play. Nick Williams, defensive tackle, was limited, but it looks like he has a chance to play as well. And I believe one of their quarterbacks, Desmond Trufant, is looking like he has a shot to play as well. So the Lions could be getting healthier for this game against the Cardinals, and it looks like they're going to need all the help they can get because the Arizona Cardinals, they're a much better squad than. Did I mention Kenny Golladay? If I didn't mention Kenny Golladay is looking like he's going to play. But the Cardinals are looking like a much better team than the Lions played last year when they blew a double-digit lead in the opener, an 18-point lead in the fourth quarter. Didn't lose the game, but they tied the game. And for a lot of Lions fans, it felt like a loss. The Lions are facing a much better Cardinals team this year. They added the best wide receiver in the NFL in DeAndre Hopkins to go along with Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray in 2 games, obviously very early, but in 2 games is off to a Pro Bowl start, 516 yards passing, and has the 5th best QBR in the NFL. Defensively, they've given up just 35 points in 2 games. And you look at the line for this game, and as you can see right down there, it's Cardinals -6 or Lions +6 as the Lions get Kenny Golladay back. But obviously I'd love to ask Dennis his thoughts on the game, but he's not available because, once again, he lost power. So I'm going to rely on you guys to participate, have some feedback as well via YouTube, via Facebook, and via Twitch. But now that the Lions are getting healthy for the 3rd game of the year, what are the odds of them pulling off an upset win in Arizona to get to 1-2 to avoid that 0-3 start where the calls for the firing of Matt Patricia will get even louder? Look, the Lions are not going to win this game. That's the one thing I know. As far as the point spread, with the Cardinals giving up 6 points, I would lean toward the Lions not being able to cover that spread, with the Cardinals being able to cover that spread, especially since it looks like they're going to be getting healthier. But the certainty is that the Cardinals are going to win this game. The one thing I really hope for is that the Lions get off to a nice fast start once again, get another double-digit lead so they can blow it, and then they'll have 5 straight games of blowing a double-digit lead and losing. I want the Lions to put some significant distance between themselves and the next team that has that's blown 3 double-digit leads and lost a game. I want the Lions to get a nice, healthy cushion, make it 5, 6, 7 games like that in a row. But if you look at the numbers for this Arizona Cardinals team, you might not be impressed because offensively they're putting up good numbers, but not great numbers. When you say, 24 points in the opener, 30 points in the second game, those are good but not great. So why is there all this hype about Kyler Murray and this new offense? One of the things you have to look at is the opponent. In week 1, you saw the opponent in the San Francisco 49ers, the defending NFC champion San Francisco 49ers. And when you put up 24 points against that team, that's almost like putting up 30 to 32 points against a regular team because they're just so loaded defensively at all 3 levels. Then you look at week 2 against Washington FT. Look, Washington FT is not a good team. It was a shock when they beat the Philadelphia Eagles in the first game of the season, even though the Eagles have that terrible offensive line. And when they backed it up by a second loss in the second game, it looked like, well, maybe the Eagles are just a bad football team. But even though Washington FT is not good, they were sacking Carson Wentz left and right. I believe they had 8 sacks in week 1. In week 2, they only got to Kyler Murray 3 times because Kyler Murray is so elusive. They upgraded their offensive line. But, against 2 teams that look like they're going to have quality defenses all year, or at least at the time they played them, because we know the Arizona Cardinals suffered multiple significant injuries on both sides of the ball. When they played the Cardinals, they were healthy. I mean, forget about Garoppolo and Mostert for the time being, because those are offensive players. Nick Bosa got injured in the second week of the season. That's going to hurt them down the stretch. And I believe one of their other defensive linemen got injured. They were healthy for that Cardinals game, and still the Cardinals in the opener put up 24 points in a victory. And then you look at at Washington FT with Chase Young and company. You put up 30 points against them. And now, all of a sudden, who's the opponent? The opponent is not Washington FT with their dominant defensive line. It's not the San Francisco 49ers with their dominant defensive line and the rest of their defense. It's the same old Lions. The Lions team that last week gave up 38 of the final 45 points of the game against the Packers. A Lions team that gave up 17 points to the Chicago Bears in the fourth quarter when Mitch Trubisky was leading the charge. I'm sorry, it wasn't 20. It was 21 straight points to Mitch Trubisky and the Bears when still, despite their 2-0 start, nobody trusts Trubisky to be any sort of game-changing quarterback, or the Bears to be any sort of Super Bowl contender. So now it's almost like the Arizona Cardinals get to go from playing the top of the top, the All-State, to playing the backups on the JV, because you could argue that Washington FT has the best defensive line in the NFL, and the Lions have one of the worst. Not only do they not rush, but Nick Williams, if he plays, is going to be less than 100%, and the rest of that defensive line isn't very productive. They don't get after the quarterback at all. So Kyler Murray can sit back there all day. He can be as small as he wants, not be able to see over the offensive line, but he'll have time to do whatever he wants to do. And then you look at the rest of the defense, the Lions are going to be getting, it looks like, a defensive back in Desmond Trufant back. But is he going to be 100%? We saw how bad Jeff Okudah looked in his first game. I think it's because he was not 100% healthy after dealing with a hamstring injury. But whether it's because of that or because he just all of a sudden lost his athleticism, going up against Larry Fitzgerald, and more importantly going up against DeAndre Hopkins, it's going to be a massive task for those 2 defensive backs, or Amani Oruwariye or McCray or whomever, and it's going to be, you would assume, easy pickings for the Arizona Cardinals. So, yeah, I've got the Arizona Cardinals winning this game. I think they should be able to win this game and cover that 6-point spread. The one thing that concerns me, even though the Cardinals' offenses look good, particularly given the competition, is this guy, Kenny Golladay. He's returning. The Lions have not had much of a deep threat to start this season off. Marvin Jones at times in the past has been a great deep threat, but they haven't really tried that this year. And perhaps it's because they've got 2 new guys on the right side of the offense. I guess Tyrell Crosby hasn't been new, but he was a backup on the right side of the offensive line. And then Jonah Jackson, the Deep South Buckeye rookie right guard, is only 2 games into his career. Perhaps they didn't feel like they had enough time for Stafford to drop back and air it out. They haven't even tried very many deep passes to Marvin Hall, who's good for just one of those per game. At least he was last year. But they get Kenny Golladay back. He's a deep threat. He's an all-over-the-field threat. Is he an elite wide receiver? No. But is he the best offensive player on the team? Yes. And I think that bringing him back is going to, I'm not going to say sharpen the dagger for dagger time or anything like that, but could it lead to the Lions getting an extra 3, 7, 10 points in this game, yes. If the Lions are going to win this game, it's going to be a shootout. They gave up 27 points to a bad offensive team. They gave up 42 points to a great offensive team, particularly the best quarterback of all time in Aaron Rodgers. Is Kyler Murray the best of all time? No, but he's a top 5 or 6 quarterback so far this year, and DeAndre Hopkins is the best wide receiver in the NFL. They're going to be putting up their fair share of points against the Lions defense. Is not going to be putting up much of a threat. If the Lions are going to keep it close, they're going to have to start off hot. They're going to have to try to not choke too much, and they're going to have to rely on Kenny Golladay and hope that his hamstring is able to hold up throughout the course of this game. So that's where I stand with this. Let's take a look at some of the feedback that's coming in on Twitch, on Facebook Live, and on YouTube. From Twitch, we got Pwog saying, playoffs, LOL. Yeah, definitely not going to see the Lions go to the playoffs. Just like, you see these a lot of other 0-2 teams talk about whether they have, or this time of year, you hear about a lot of talk about which 0-2 team is best suited to turn things around. It's not going to happen with the same old Lions. If they win, I'll say this: if the Lions beat the Cardinals, here's what it's going to do, and a lot of Lions fans are familiar with this. It's going to be that same old feeling of the empty win at the beginning of the year when it seems like everything's about to go into the porta potty, and it happens just in time to keep the Slappies on board, just in time to keep the Slappies saying, "Hey, look at the adjustments Patricia made." He's got that pencil in his ear for a reason. He's a real smart nerd, and after finding a way to deconstruct that Arizona Cardinals offense, we can trust in him to get things going in the right direction. That's what's going to happen. And folks are going to say, hey, they're going to get all these defensive backs back, and they've got a shot to beat New Orleans. That's all it's going to do. But it's not going to convince me that the Lions are going to the playoffs. Also, taking a look at our feedback in YouTube from Keith Frozen Dennis. Keith also says, Lions defense won't be able to stop this Cardinals offense this year. There's no way they win. That I will tell you. I hate the Lions, and I hope they lose. They deserve all the losing because of the stupid people in charge hiring Quinn and Patricia. Yeah, not a very smart organization, I would say. Wouldn't you agree, Dennis? Oh, sorry. It's still life, Dennis, as he continues to deal with his power outage or whatever it is in the Dexter area. Also got a comment from Jimmy on YouTube. I think Golladay is going to have a slow return to the game. It's great we can add a weapon back into this offense, but the defense is going to get run over by the law offices of Murray and Hopkins. Agree with that 100%. And then via Facebook from DJ, do you really want Trevor Lawrence to turn into Stafford 2.0? Well, look, whoever the Lions draft, whoever the Lions get to replace Quinn and Patricia, is going to relate. It's just going to end up being more SOL, just more Lions ineptitude, more one playoff win since 1957 nonsense. But Lions fans can dream if they want to. They can hope if they want to. And I'll say this: when the Lions drafted Matthew Stafford, I wasn't all in on him. I saw him play a little bit at Georgia, and I particularly remember him participating in that what was it, the Capital One Bowl or something like that against Michigan State, and he wasn't impressive in the first quarter. He wasn't impressive in the second quarter. In the third quarter, he made an excellent back shoulder pass to one of his receivers, and he had a couple of great drives in that game. And I was thinking, all right, there's the glimpse of greatness that I can see from him. But he had one good quarter in that game, and I was thinking, you know what? There's not much special to him. And I've been proven right. When it comes to Trevor Lawrence, I think we all know that he's going to be a special quarterback in the NFL, and I would say the same about Justin Fields, who before the CFP last year, I believe he had thrown just one interception. So I think that it's not the same situation when you're comparing that. Also from Joey on Facebook, Dennis is as useful today as DeAndre Swift was at the end of the Lions opener. Oh! What do you have to say about that, Dennis? And one more from Paul. Fantasy football, DeAndre Swift, play or pass? I would not play DeAndre Swift. I mean, there's multiple reasons not to play DeAndre Swift. Number one, he's not the starting running back. Number two, he might not get the second most carries on the Detroit Lions because it looks like Kerryon Johnson's the number one running back and Adrian Peterson's the number two running back. And number three, if the Lions are going to be playing from behind, then they're going to be passing the football. DeAndre Swift has been known to drop the football. So I would not I would not start him. I wouldn't have him on my team if I was you. I'll say that. Let's turn the page now to the second chapter. And the second chapter takes us to college football with the Michigan Wolverines and the Michigan State Spartans. Today is the 24th of September, and that means we are exactly 1 month away from the return of college football. That's for, of course, we are Penn State, which, of course, now that Dennis isn't around, we know that is the most important college football program in the Big Ten and most important on the show. He doesn't even have that stupid mug that he can put up to the screen that says Penn State sucks, and, well, they don't. But it also means the return of college football for Michigan and Michigan State fans. And each team is going to be breaking in a new quarterback. Michigan State is done with the Brian Lewerke era. Michigan is done with the Shea Patterson era, who somehow, some way, didn't win a Heisman, wasn't drafted in the first round, second round, third round, fourth round, fifth round, sixth round, or seventh round. Took him forever to be signed as an undrafted free agent, and now he's not with any team. But that just means there's a new quarterback for Michigan's fan base to hype up. Joe Milton is the new quarterback for Michigan football. Last year, he was the third-string quarterback behind Dylan McCaffrey, the number 2 quarterback of last year, and Shea undrafted quarterback Patterson. Joe Milton apparently beat out Dylan McCaffrey for the starting job, and Dylan McCaffrey has put in his notice to transfer. Meanwhile, in East Lansing, with the Brian Lewerke era over, it looks as if Rocky Lombardi is going to be the starting quarterback there. There's a chance that Peyton Thorne could get the job, chance that Theo Day could get the job, but all indications are that Rocky Lombardi has won the job there. And really now it just comes down to what your expectations are for these two as we head into the 2020 season. And Dennis, I'll start with you. Oh, sorry. It's such a great picture of still life, Dennis, that I thought that he was actually back. But no, remember, as we head into the second chapter, Dennis is, at least as of right now, not in today's show because he lost power at his home in Dexter. So make sure that you guys continue to bring in your feedback via YouTube, via Twitch, and via Facebook Live, and I'll read it throughout the course of this show. But my expectations for Joe Milton, I'll give you that in just a second, but I want to share with you some of what Josh Gaddis, the offensive coordinator for Michigan, said about Joe Milton once it became clear that Milton was going to be the starting quarterback. I think these comments came out yesterday or the day before, but he said that Milton, who's a big physical quarterback, can throw it 70 to 80 yards. He said that he's added touch because we saw last year did not have much touch, and said that his accuracy has been exceptional. He said that he's been one of the most improved players on the team and has a wow play every practice, and he's had better pocket presence than in the past. I think that Michigan obviously needs this to be true. They haven't had a great college quarterback And I went back and looked. They haven't had a great college quarterback since Denard Robinson back in 2011. 2012, the next year, I think he was hurt a little bit. Devin Gardner played not a great quarterback year. But in 2011, that was the last year Michigan had a great college quarterback. And in that year, Michigan went 11-2. That was Brady Hoke's first season. This is Michigan. Milton, is he going to be that quarterback? Michigan fans will tell you so because they said that about every quarterback, whether it's Shea Patterson, whether it's Shane Morris, whether it's Devin Gardner, whether it's a John O'Corn. Oh, look, he transferred from Houston. Whether it's whomever the flavor of the day is, they're always going to say that their quarterback is going to find their way. What's different about this is that this is the first quarterback that Jim Harbaugh has recruited who is going to be the starting quarterback for Michigan. Because you look at Shea Patterson, the last 2 years, transfer from Ole Miss. His first year, it was a transfer from Iowa, Jake Rudock. John O'Corn was the quarterback. He also had Brandon Peters, but Peters wasn't, starting the whole year out as a starting quarterback. But Joe Milton recruited, and actually, I don't even think that Brandon Peters was recruited by Harbaugh. I think he was recruited by Brady Hoke. I digress. Joe Milton, recruited by Harbaugh, is going to be starting, and he's going to have a lot of obstacles. Some of them are his own obstacles, and some of the obstacles are from the program. For instance, he's got basically no experience. He's in his third year as a redshirt sophomore, but he has 11 passing attempts. He has 4 new offensive linemen. So that means he could be running for his life in some of the most competitive games of the season if the offensive line doesn't gel quickly. He only has 1 returning wide receiver with at least 10 receptions or at least 150 yards receiving from 2019, and that's Ronnie Bell, the same Ronnie Bell who dropped the pass in the end zone against We Are Penn State. He also has no returning tight end with more than 25 yards receiving from last year. No great running backs. Charbonnet is a pretty good running back, and they've got a couple other pretty good running backs. But Michigan has had pretty good running backs for years since Mike Hart. Haven't had a great running back since Mike Hart. And the other thing that he doesn't have that really not many teams have unless you're in the Big 12 is that they don't have a few warm-up games against some garbage MAC schools or Air Force. By the way, breaking just before the show, the Pac-12 announced that they're going to resume, I believe, the first weekend in November with a 7-game season. I don't know if the CFP is going to allow the Pac-12 to have a team into the CFP if a team goes 7-0. That's not very much. Anyway, but not having a couple of warm-up games before you hit the Big Ten schedule is going to hurt as well. His first game on the road against Minnesota. The other issue that Joe Milton's going to have is the weather. Now, I'm not talking about colder weather because they're starting the season late and they're going deeper into the season. They're going into December 19th. I'm talking about based on the fact that Joe Milton is from Florida. He's never thrown a cold weather pass in a game, right? He's a redshirt sophomore. Last year, his last pass attempt was in September against Rutgers. I don't know what the weather was like in that game. I don't know whether it was in New Jersey or Michigan, but it was in late September of last year, meaning the weather was pretty good. It could have been in the 80s. If it was cold, it was in the 60s. He's never played football and thrown a pass in his life in a meaningful game when the weather's been in the 50s. His first game of 2020 is going to be October 24th, 1 month from today, in Minneapolis, Minnesota. I did some research. The high in Minneapolis on October 24th, 2019 was 44 degrees. When he was in high school in Florida, the average temperature for his high school games was probably double that at 88. He's got outdoor games all throughout the month of November and then December, where the temperature is going to be even colder than a typical Michigan game would be. That Michigan-Ohio State game, the high could be, 29 degrees. And that's assuming COVID-19 hasn't canceled the season. But he's got a lot of obstacles ahead of him. Obviously, lots of hype about Michigan quarterbacks. If the hype about Milton is true, all that stuff that Josh Gaddis was talking about is true, then Michigan will have a chance to go 6-2 before the bonus game. They're not going to beat the Deep South Buckeyes. Could they beat Penn State or Wisconsin if he lives up to the hype? A big-time quarterback can help you to do that. And Wisconsin, they've had pretty good quarterback play. Sean Clifford was not all that impressed with him last year. Part of that was due to his wide receivers not living up to expectations. Could they sneak away one of those two games? Possibly. But if he doesn't live up to those expectations, then they've got no shot of going anything better than 5-3 in their first 8 games before the bonus game, and they've got a very good shot of going something like 4-4, especially with that first game being on the road against the Minnesota Golden Gophers. So, but if he lives up to that hype, then not only could they go 6 or 7-2, but they'd also have some legitimate hype with a high ceiling for them for next year. As far as Michigan State is concerned, Rocky Lombardi is, I think, more than just a favorite to win this job. I was looking at some of his, looking at some quotes from Rocky Lombardi the last week or so, and he was basically, one of the quotes, the gist of it was, yeah, I hear all the talk about there being a quarterback competition or a battle, but I'm taking it as if I am the starting quarterback, and there really hasn't been any, much talk about any competition. I don't believe that Lombardi has been named the starting quarterback, but Theo Day, the redshirt sophomore, hasn't shown anything. Redshirt freshman Peyton Thorne hasn't shown anything. And as far as Mel Tucker, the head coach, about the quarterback competition, late last month, he didn't say anything illuminating. He said, not a lot of time to evaluate players, but what I did see was very, very competitive. Now, from that standpoint, that might suggest that he's making an honest assessment, in which case Lombardi is in a 3-way battle. On the other hand, it could just be coach speak. I don't know, because I don't know Mel Tucker enough. I mean, he's been the head coach for just 7 months, so we're all still learning about what type of person he's going to be when it comes to exchanges with the fake and dishonest media. But I'll say this, Spartan fans should hope that it's coach speak, because if it's an honest assessment that Rocky Lombardi is neck and neck with Theo Day and or Peyton Thorne, or that is very competitive, which was Mel Tucker's wording, then they don't have a quarterback. And if I would say this, even if it isn't competitive, that still suggests that they don't have a quarterback, because Rocky Lombardi isn't like some hyped up redshirt freshman who just doesn't have a lot of experience. He's a redshirt junior who doesn't have a lot of experience and couldn't beat out Brian Lewerke, who's not playing for anybody. At least I don't believe he is. And on top of that, from when we have seen him in college football, he's obviously got a lot more experience than Joe Milton. It's been pretty bad. He's thrown 175 passes, does have a couple of starts in his career. 175 passes is not a small sample size, and in those 175 passes, he's completed 43% of them. Additionally, he's thrown 3 touchdown passes and 5 interceptions. Additionally, he couldn't beat out Brian Lewerke for a starting quarterback job. That tells me Rocky Lombardi is terrible. Michigan State fans already know that. I think if you're a Spartan fan, what you'd like to hear is that Day or Thorne has really separated himself and will be a great Spartans quarterback. You'd like to hear Mel Tucker drool over Day or Thorne. You'd like to hear, honestly, if I'm a Spartan fan, what I'd like to hear is what I heard out of Michigan, and that is that Rocky Lombardi is transferring because he wants to play. And the reason he's transferring is because Day or Thorne, more likely Thorne, because Day has had his opportunity with an extra year in the program, entering his 3rd year, and hasn't shown anything. And you'd like to hear that Thorne, the redshirt freshman, is ready to take over as a Spartan quarterback and be the star of the future. Now, maybe Mel Tucker's not about that, or maybe there's no reason to drool. I don't know, but until proven otherwise, I'm going to assume that Michigan State has a major problem at quarterback when the leader in the clubhouse, based on experience and based on the way he's talking to the media, has been pretty bad when we've seen him. Pretty bad. Let's take a look at some of the feedback. And I apologize I don't have it already ready to go because, well, doing the show. Here's another comment on Facebook from DJ who says, I wouldn't trust Patricia to wash my car. Yeah, I think there's a lot of people that certainly don't trust Patricia to do much anything right now because he's been such a disappointment at as head coach. And you know what would you trust him to do? Perhaps build a rocket ship because he's got that experience as a rocket scientist. But no, I wouldn't trust Matt Patricia to wash my car. He'd probably choke at the end. He'd say, all right, hey, at the end, make sure you shine the tires. And knowing Patricia, if you know that's the end, he'd forget to shine them and he'd slash them. Also checking in on YouTube from Keith. I have Golladay on my fantasy team. Should I start him over Slayton or should I start Slayton or Montgomery over him? I haven't checked to see who they're playing, but I would just say I would probably go with. I wouldn't be certain to go with one of those two over Kenny Golladay. The Lions are going to be trailing, so they're going to be passing. So that's something to consider. Now, I don't know how fresh his legs are going to be. I don't know if he's going to be able to outrun defensive backs and whatnot. But, yeah, I would probably go with Slayton. But I once again, this is having not checked to see who every team is playing this weekend. All right, let's turn the page now to the third chapter. And in the third chapter, that takes us to baseball with the Detroit Tigers. And they're playing right now. Don't know what the score is. But their season is coming to a close. They are not making the playoffs. They were officially eliminated from the playoffs yesterday. And last night may have been the final start of Casey Mize's 2020 season. If the Tigers don't have to have a doubleheader against the Cardinals on Monday to decide their playoff positioning, then Casey Mize truly will be done for the season. And in his start yesterday, Mize looked good to start. He faced 6 batters in his first 2 innings. That's the minimum. Then he gave up singles to the 7, 8, and 9 hitters. Then gave up an RBI single on an 0-2 pitch. Missed his bat badly. Piped it right down the middle. Then the next inning gave up a walk and a 2-run bomb. Then in the 5th inning, Casey Mize got the first 2 outs, but gave up a walk and another 400-foot bomb. In 28 and a third innings pitched in 2020, the Tigers' top pitching prospect, a guy who was the number 8 prospect overall coming into this year, gave up 7 home runs, that's about 1 home run every 4 innings, and had a 6.99 ERA. Now, if you remember, he debuted the same week as Tarik Skubal. He debuted the very next day. It was actually 3 Major League debuts in a row. It was Isaac Paredes, the third baseman, on a Monday against the White Sox. It was Skubal on a Tuesday, and then Mize on a Wednesday. And as far as Skubal is concerned, we know that he's guaranteed to make 1 more start. That's going to be on Sunday. And through 7 starts, he has not been much better. He, like Casey Mize, has given up 7 home runs, and his ERA is a .99 better at an even 6. Now, obviously, their careers are not complete, but their seasons are pretty close to complete. Dennis, what did you think of the 2020 seasons of Tarik Skubal and Casey Mize? Oh, sorry. We're still dealing with Still Life Dennis as we turn the page to the third chapter, because if you're just joining us, Dennis has lost his power out in Dexter and therefore doesn't have any access to the internet. So if you want to weigh in on what you thought of Tarik Skubal and Casey Mize in their 2020 seasons, definitely love to take your feedback, whether you're watching on Facebook, whether you're watching on YouTube, or you're watching on Twitch. So if I was going to grade these guys and they were seasoned veterans, which they're not because they have each had 7 stars. But if they were seasoned veterans, I would give them a grade of F, because you just can't be a major league starting pitcher and give up a home run every 4 innings pitched, and you can't be a major league starting pitcher and have an ERA of 6 or above. You got an ERA above 6. You're talking about Jordan Zimmerman numbers, and that's a flat out F. Because they each have just 7 stars, I'm going to give them each a D+. I don't think you can look at either one of those two objectively and call their seasons great. You can't call them great. You can't call them good. You can't call them okay. You can't even call them a little bit below average. A 6 ERA for one of them, a 6.99 ERA for the other. 7 home runs for both. That's a home run per start. And they weren't going deep into games. When you're talking about guys that were labeled top 50 prospects coming into the year, one of them a top 10 prospect. They've had 7 starts to prove that they could be locks for the 2021 rotation, and I don't think either one of them passed the test because neither one looked like even a number 5 caliber starting pitcher. Does this mean that I don't think they're going to be in the rotation next year? No, I think that they'll both likely make the opening day rotation, but what's the competition right now? Jordan Zimmerman's contract will be off the books. Matt Boyd was atrocious. Honestly, the only starting pitcher who looked like a legitimate major league starting pitcher throughout the course of this 60-game season has been Spencer Turnbull. That's it. I mean, Michael Fulmer, who's pitching today, has only been going 3 innings to start, and he's been awful in those 3 innings for the most part. Sometimes he's not even making it 3 innings because he's been so bad. Skubal, Mize, already mentioned them. It's Matt Boyd, who for some reason a lot of folks thought that the first 2 months of last year were the new Matt Boyd and the last 4 months of last year was an aberration. I mean, he was even worse in these 60 games than he was in the final 4 months of last year. They've got one starting pitcher that they can count on right now. So with that being said, Skubal and Mize should have very good shots of making the rotation out of spring training next year. But it's not because of how well they pitched this year. One thing that really troubled me, given the hype that these two had, given the production that they had last year at AA, was how little control they had, how little command they had. And it was both of them. I was, you can watch game after game and 0-2 count. Catcher lines up, sets up low and outside, and look at that. The pitch misses by a foot and is right down the middle. As a matter of fact, Casey Mize did that, piped a pitch right down the middle, and gave up an RBI single on an 0-2 pitch yesterday. On Jake Cave's home run last night, it was a 3-2 pitch. You saw the catcher line up low and outside. The pitch missed so far that instead of going low and outside, it went thigh high and on the inside part of the plate. Cave crushed it for a 400-foot home run. That's what Casey Mize, the top prospect, did yesterday. Tarik Skubal supposed to throw a pitch on the outside corner. Instead, it's over the middle of the plate and 6 inches above the top of the strike zone. These guys, all throughout their combined 14 starts, have shown no command. Now, I get perhaps if you have some command, but maybe your stuff isn't as sharp or whatever, or maybe you bounce back and forth between having some command one inning and not having command the other inning. But these guys, for the most part, if they go 4 innings, 3 of the 4 innings, they're going to have awful command. They're going to miss their target by, on a good pitch, 6 inches. On a bad pitch, 18 inches to 2 feet. You look in particular at Casey Mize. We were all told how great his split finger was supposed to be, right? And at times, it has been devastating. But doesn't it seem like half the time Casey Mize doesn't just miss with his split finger, isn't just short with his split finger, but the pitch is bouncing a foot or two in front of home plate. Nobody's going to be swinging and missing at a pitch a foot or two in front of home plate. Even the old Vladimir Guerrero, when he was in the league and swung at everything, he wouldn't be swinging at a pitch like that. So when you got two guys that are missing, that are lacking so much in terms of command, I can't give you anything better than a D+. That's exactly what you deserve. And I know that one instinct might be to say, "Oh, these guys are young. You gotta grade them on the curve." I grade them on a curve by giving them a D+ as opposed to an F. All right, because if they were veterans and not rookies, they would have failed this year. But let's not act like because you're making your major league debut this year, you have to be a terrible pitcher. Dustin May of the Dodgers, he was not as highly touted as Casey Mize. He was not a top 10 prospect in all of baseball. And Dustin May has been arguably the best starting pitcher on the Dodgers this year. And if they had an all-star game, he'd be making the all-star game this year. He's got an ERA under 3. He made the opening day start for the Dodgers this year. Tristan McKenzie, the stick figure for the Indians, he's been great this year. Not as great as May, but he's been great. The expectation when you've got a couple of top 50 prospects is that perhaps one of them could be as good as May has been this year or McKenzie. Instead, didn't they look a heck of a lot more like Jordan Zimmerman than Dustin May or Tristan the stick figure McKenzie? Yes. When you're giving up 7 home runs and 28 in the third innings pitch, Casey Mize, you look more like Jordan Zimmerman. And even if you say, well, the Dustin May, Tristan McKenzie standard is too high, what about Brady Singer of the Royals? He looked pretty good this year. He looked like he had some promise. He wasn't struggling, and he had a no-hitter not just into the 5th inning, which is what Casey Mize had a couple of starts ago. He had a no-hitter, I believe, through 8 innings, either 8 innings or into the 8th inning. Jesus Luzardo for the A's, he's got an ERA under 4, not an ERA of 6 or higher. He made his major league debut this year. So neither one of them did anything this year to accelerate the pace of the rebuild. If anything, you're thinking, wow, are we going to have to look even further for help in the pitching rotation? What about Matt Manning? Now, I'm not giving up on either one of these two. Not through 7 starts. 8 starts, it'll be for Tarik Skubal after Sunday. And if they have the doubleheader, which I expect on Monday, then Casey Mize will get his 8th start. I'm just saying that based on what I've seen this year, there's no reason to say that they've solved their pitching issues, and they didn't live up to the hype whatsoever. They just didn't. Taking a look at some more of the feedback, if we have any, from Puag on Twitter. Will minor league baseball return next year? Miss the West Michigan Whitecaps baseball team. Yeah, I know that you miss perhaps hearing the call of Dan Hasty, a friend of mine, former colleague of mine, who is the play-by-play voice of the West Michigan Whitecaps. And I believe it's going to happen next year. But look, the most important factor in determining whether or not we're going to have minor league baseball next year is the coronavirus, the Rona. How well we do of stopping the spread of it, cutting down on cases, cutting down on deaths. How long is a second wave going to be? Is there going to be a deep second wave? Stuff like that. And there's already evidence in Israel with them shutting down their whole country, a northern hemisphere country, with what's going on in Europe. And with the case numbers rising up in the United States of America, that the second wave is coming. And if a second wave comes and it happens throughout the course of cold weather, then that means that second wave could last into, March? Spring training is supposed to start in late February. So we could be talking about, at the very least, a delayed start to the 2021 baseball season. But in terms of a minor league season, I think it'd be very difficult to not have a minor league season for consecutive years. But if this coronavirus is around, then everything is on the table in terms of bad things that could happen. And not having minor league baseball for prospects to play, for prospects to fine-tune themselves, and for organizations to have a deeper pool of talent to choose from. when trying to get things together. So I think that there's a good chance of it coming next year, but I have no idea what's going to take place in the next 6 months. 6 months from today, it'll be March 24th, my dad's birthday, which would be about a week before opening day. 6 months ago, on March 24th, we were entering our 9th day without sports. So, yeah, I don't know. Also, from Facebook, it doesn't look like we have any new comments on Facebook. And then in terms of YouTube, saying there, make sure you guys keep your comments coming in as we are without Still Life Dennis today. Let's now turn the page to the 4th chapter, and that takes us to the NBA. Once I'm done with the show tonight, I'll be watching Game 4 between the Lakers and the Nuggets, and it's 2-1 right now. We know that the Nuggets are trailing 2-1 to the lazy Lakers, and we've got kind of two competing trends here, because you got the Nuggets playing better with each game. They got blown out in the first game. In Game 2, they were down by 8 late. They took a late lead, but then Anthony Davis with his unibrow hit a buzzer beater so that the Lakers got that 2-0 lead. And then in Game 3, you saw the Nuggets get out to an 18-point lead after 3 quarters, en route to an easy win. So on one hand, you got the trend of the Nuggets getting better and the Lakers getting worse with each game of the series. On the other hand, you got this trend of the Nuggets getting down 3-1. In their opening series against the Jazz, they got down 3-1, won 3 straight to advance. In their second series against the Clippers, they got out they got down 3-1 and won 3 straight. By the way, I mentioned at the top of the show, G Mac Cash has his new album out called The MacBook. We interviewed him a couple of months ago. I would recommend that album, especially if you're from Detroit. But he also put out a new single a week ago called Clippers, which, well, yeah, it trashes the Clippers for choking away that 3-game series lead. But if the Nuggets continue that trend, then they'll lose Game 4 tonight. So now the question is, Dennis, will the Nuggets upset the Lakers? And with so many Lakers and LeBron fans out there, are you going to watch the NBA Finals if the Lakers don't make it? Oh, sorry, that's right. Still Life Dennis is still with us, because if you missed the first couple of chapters, Dennis lost his power before the start of the show. And if he can rejoin in the next few minutes, he can be a part of the last few minutes of the show. Otherwise, without any power, obviously, there's no ability for him to remotely get onto this show. But I do appreciate Still Life Dennis right there, silently listening and not disagreeing with any of the wise words of wisdom that I've been imparting on my audience throughout the course of this show. But I think the Nuggets are going to upset the Lakers and win this series. I had the Nuggets in 6 before the series started. If they win Game 4 tonight, which I think they will, it'll be 2-2. And Dennis is not Dennis. Denver will be in control, because they'll have gone from getting blown out in the first game to losing on a buzzer beater in the second game to a blowout win, and who knows what kind of win, but another win in Game 4. And the Lakers would have to consider themselves very fortunate to not be down 3-1. The Jamal Murray, if he continues to play like this, the Lakers might have to consider switching LeBron James onto him. He's obviously their best perimeter defender, and if you can put the clamp down on him defensively, on Jamal Murray defensively, or at least slow him up, put a couple of hurdles in front of him, a big LBJ hurdle, that could slow him down. But one of the problems with that is that LeBron James and Anthony Davis need some help. They combined for 57 in Game 3, and their teammates had 49. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, former Piston, was the third leading scorer with 12. That's not a recipe for winning. Kyle Kuzma, he's more talented than a guy that's going to put up 11 points in a game. Where was Danny Green? Where was Alex Caruso, Mr. 1 for 7 in Tuesday's game? On top of that, LeBron James hasn't looked special offensively in this series. He had a triple-double in game 3, but only had 30 points. Had 26 in game 2, only 15 in game 1, and obviously they didn't need him in game 1 to put up more than 15 because they blew the Nuggets out with just the 15 points. But I think LeBron James, given his supporting cast of Anthony Davis and perhaps nothing else, needs to go off like Donovan Mitchell did in the first round, like Jamal Murray did in the first round. Unless he thinks he's going to get more out of Markieff Morris, Alex Caruso, Dwight Howard, and Rajon Rondo, who's more about getting steals and dropping dimes, why is he not going off for 45 points? If you remember, it was either earlier this week or last week, sometime within the last week, when they announced the MVP. He said he was pissed off, not that he didn't win the MVP, but that he didn't get enough first place MVP votes. If he was angry about not getting that, isn't it time for him to start taking control and looking like an MVP, a unanimous MVP, or the guy that should have won the MVP? I'm not saying that he should have won it, but I'm certainly not saying that based on how he's played this series. He's looked like an all-star, perhaps even a first-team All-NBA player. But if he's supposed to be in the conversation for the best in the game, in the history of the game, where's the 45 points? Where's the 50 points? Why is he trying to dish it off to bricklayers and ball shorts? If you know, you know. And I know right now, LeBron and Anthony Davis need to step up. And Anthony Davis, you could say that he perhaps could step it up as well, although I think he's had 30 points in every single game. But when you keep on trying to get Kuzma and Morris and Caruso and KCP into the mix, and they're just not putting it together, you might just make it a two-man game. That was the goal when they put this thing together, right? When Anthony Davis wanted to play with LeBron James and the Lakers, and he decided to quit on the Pelicans with half a season to go because he said it's going to be either Lakers or bust. It was so that the two of them alone, with whatever help they could get, the two of them alone could lead them not just past the Nuggets, but to an NBA championship, regardless of the circumstances, Rona or no Rona, bubble or no bubble, home court advantage or no home court advantage. Anthony Davis and LeBron James need to step up. I don't think that they're going to be able to do so with Denver having a more balanced team, with Jamal Murray being unstoppable so far, with Nikola Jokic proving to be I don't think he can guard Anthony Davis, but Anthony Davis has had trouble guarding him as well, and that same thing goes for McGee or Howard when they get their chances on him. I will say this in terms of the Lakers potentially not making the NBA Finals, and right now I'm predicting they won't. I think it's going to be Nuggets versus Miami Heat, and that was my prediction before the series started. I know there are a lot of LeBron James fans out there, and a lot of them and a lot of Lakers fans out there, and a lot of them are not going to tune in to the NBA Finals if LeBron isn't playing. I don't care who's playing in the NBA Finals. I'm watching. I'll watch the finals if it's Heat versus Nuggets, if it's Celtics versus Nuggets, if it's Celtics versus Lakers, or if it's Lakers versus Heat. But I heard a national sports talk show host on the radio recently say that he didn't want a team like Denver or Utah or another small market team in the NBA Finals because ratings would be down and he would get fewer callers. I think that's embarrassing, and he's one of my favorite national sports talk show hosts. But if you're a professional sports talk show host, you should have to rely on callers. You should be able to rely on your talent and provide an entertaining program for your listeners, whether you've got a whole bunch of callers or not. Obviously, if you're in radio and talk radio, you want the callers, but you have to be able to overcome that adversity and rely on your talent and not just say, oh, well, big market teams didn't make it. Fewer people care because it's not LA versus Boston. So, man, this is going to be really hard to do a show. I mean, think about this show. I have still life Dennis because he didn't have his internet. His internet went out. Don't have any people calling in. And, we've got some feedback to read on Twitch, Facebook, and YouTube, and I appreciate the feedback that's coming in. And I also don't have any commercial breaks. But I'm not sitting here and whining because of big markets or whining because of no calls or whining because there's no co-host. I'm doing the show. And I'll tell you this. If anything, I would root against the big market teams because here in the Detroit area, we don't like the big markets. We didn't like it when back when the Pistons were so great, went to the Eastern Conference Finals 6 years in a row. The national media were saying, "Oh, we're getting sick and tired of the Pistons." I would prefer Boston and LA not to make it, and for it to be Miami versus the Denver Nuggets, and they're exciting teams to watch as well. All right, let me see if we have some feedback. If not, we'll turn the page to the fifth chapter. And let's see. YouTube, Facebook, Twitch. Looks like all the feedback is in, so we can turn the page to the fifth chapter, and that will take us to the major wager. And on Tuesday, I believe Dennis picked an NFL game, which obviously that NFL game hasn't taken place yet. I picked the Padres to win and cover, and the Padres lost, so that wasn't good for me. But I also mentioned that I liked the Nuggets, the Brewers, and the Dodgers, and they all won and covered, so that was nice to make up for the Padres. Today I'm going to go with kind of a risky pick, because they've already been eliminated from the playoffs. But I like the Red Sox to win and to cover. They are, I believe they were 1.5 run favorites. I mean, the run line is always 1.5 in baseball. But they were playing the Baltimore Orioles. And the reason I like this game is because of the matchups. Yes, the Red Sox suck, but they've been tearing up right-handed pitching recently, while the Orioles, in their last 166 plate appearances against left-handed pitchers, have a 166 batting average. The Red Sox are starting a lefty to take advantage of that, while the Orioles are starting a righty. And when I see that, and I see that it's plus 120 at the 1.5 run spread, I think, you know what, this is an opportunity to take advantage. And looking at the score for the game right now, not working out so well because the Orioles have a 3-0 lead, and maybe that's because they have. Actually, I don't even think the Orioles have a chance to make the playoffs. But right now, in the top of the third inning, the Orioles have a 3-0 lead. They have 6 hits, and the Red Sox have just 1 hit. So still a lot of baseball to be played, but not looking good so far. Some other bets that I like the Nuggets plus 6. I like the Tigers to win despite Michael Fulmer on the mound, and right now that's not looking good either because the Royals have a 3-0 lead, and Michael Fulmer's been terrible all the time. I like that because the Tigers have been hitting left-handed pitching so well. And as for this weekend, I like the Cardinals to win, probably to cover, but definitely to win. I like the Patriots to win against the Raiders, and I like the Packers plus 3 against the Saints. As far as Thursday Night Football, which is about to start, or maybe it already has started, with DJ Chark, the defense or the wide receiver for the Jaguars, not being able to make the starts tonight, I'm not touching that. Earlier in the day, I was thinking that it would be a good play to pick the Jaguars to win that game, but with no DJ Chark, the leading receiver for the Jaguars, obviously not like a big household name or anything like that. I just didn't I didn't like picking that. Now, perhaps if you're watching the game, if you like the way it's going, perhaps you might want to get in on the live betting aspect of it. But I was just not a fan of picking this game either way. Anyway, I want to thank you guys for tuning in to episode 40 of the Fifth Chapter. Dennis, thank you as well, even though you're still live, Dennis. But we'll be back on Tuesday, talk about that game in Arizona between the Lions and the Cardinals, and perhaps regular Dennis, not still life Dennis, will be back. See you guys on Tuesday.
He represents the mitten by way of Penn State. When Chapman gets to talking sports, the people can't wait. He represents the mitten. Be a true EMU, but cut Dennis in the fall and his veins bleeding blue. They got respect around the state. When that light turns red, so don't sleep on these dudes. Just invite your friends to cut your nap short and tip your cap for and sit back for the Fifth Chapter. Huh. Brian Chapman. Dennis Fithian. When they open their mouths, they spitting the facts, bro. This ain't even optional, man. You just have to tune into YouTube to watch the broadcast or download it to your phone to peep the podcast. They mix laughter, they get after. It's all captured in the